Good morning. Today, I want to inform the public about the outcome of our prosecution review of the BCA's investigation regarding the death of Philando Castile, which occurred the evening of July 6 in Falcon Heights, Minnesota. On July 8th, I told the public that this office would be substantially engaged in the BCA's investigation and that we would do everything in our power to ensure that we were thorough and impartial in our fact-finding and firmly committed to upholding the rule of law. I also left open the question of whether we would utilize a grand jury for our review. After much thought about the need for public transparency in this case, I have concluded that the best course of action is for me to make this decision, fully explain it, and be directly accountable to the public. After spending the past 19 weeks immersed in the facts and law and thinking about what justice requires in this case, my conscience tells me it would be wrong for me to ask a grand jury to make this decision when I know in my heart what needs to be done. I know my decision will be difficult for some in our community to accept, but in order to achieve justice, we must be willing to do the right thing, no matter how hard it may seem. Today, I am prepared to announce my decision as to whether Officer Jeronimo Yanez's use of deadly force on July 6 was justified and whether criminal charges are warranted. Before I do that, I want to thank a number of people who played an integral role in reaching my decision. First, I want to thank the BCA Superintendent, Drew Evans, and his staff for making this investigation a top priority, conducting it in a professional manner, and providing it to our office without recommendation. I also want to express my deepest gratitude to my prosecution team that worked with the BCA and helped me reach this decision. They are all here standing behind me: John Kelly, Rick Dusterhoff, Jill Gerber, Clayton Robinson, and Special Prosecutor Don Lewis. I cannot express enough my appreciation for their contributions to this process and their dedication to justice. As you may recall, on July 7th, the United States Department of Justice publicly stated that it would monitor the BCA investigation and would be available to provide assistance. On July 27th, I made a request for assistance to the Department of Justice through our local United States Attorney on a number of technical issues associated with the investigation and anticipated prosecution review. Since that time, the local United States Attorney's Office and FBI have been assisting us with this case. I want to thank both United States Attorney Andy Luger and FBI Special Agent in Charge Rick Thornton, who are also here today, for their partnership and investment in our efforts. Under Minnesota law, the use of deadly force by a police officer is justified only when necessary to protect the officer or another from apparent death or great bodily harm. In addition, the United States Supreme Court has repeatedly made it clear that a police officer's use of deadly force must be evaluated in the context of what a reasonable police officer would do in the same situation, given the danger and stress of police work. When evaluating the reasonableness of a police officer's use of deadly force, we must take into account that police officers are often required to react quickly in tense, uncertain, and rapidly evolving situations. To justify the use of deadly force, it is not enough, however, for the police officer to merely express a subjective fear of death or great bodily harm. Unreasonable fear cannot justify the use of deadly force. The use of deadly force must be objectively reasonable and necessary given the totality of the circumstances. Based upon our thorough and exhaustive review of the facts of this case, it is my conclusion that the use of deadly force by Officer Yanez was not justified, and that sufficient facts exist to prove this to be true. Accordingly, we filed a criminal complaint this morning in Ramsey County District Court charging Officer Yanez with second-degree manslaughter in the death of Philando Castile and 2 felony counts of dangerous discharge of a firearm that endangered the safety of Diamond Reynolds and her 4-year-old daughter, the 2 passengers in the car. The complaint will be on our website and available to the public upon the conclusion of my remarks. Jeronimo Yanez will make his first appearance in criminal court Friday afternoon at 1:30 p.m. at the Ramsey County Law Enforcement Center. A team consisting of Assistant Ramsey County Attorneys Rick Dusterhoff, Clayton Robinson, and Assistant United States Attorney Jeff Paulson, by way of cross-designation, will be assigned to prosecute this case. Because this is still an ongoing investigation and now a pending criminal matter, I will not be releasing the squad car video and audio today, but I will provide what information I can about the facts that are alleged in our criminal complaint. As you know, the aftermath of the tragic events of July 6 was broadcast on Facebook Live by Diamond Reynolds, who was Philando Castile's girlfriend. That live stream video started approximately 40 seconds after the last shot was fired by Officer Yanez. On July 6, just after 9 p.m., Officer Yanez was on patrol when he noticed a vehicle driven by Philando Castile. Accompanying Philando Castile in the vehicle was Diamond Reynolds, seated in the front passenger seat, and Miss Reynolds' 4-year-old daughter seated in a car seat behind her. Officer Yanez communicated his intent to pull over Castile's vehicle by radio to fellow St. Anthony police officer Joseph Kauser, who was on patrol nearby. Officer Yanez told Officer Kauser that he had reason to pull the vehicle over and stated that the occupants just looked like the people that were involved in the robbery. Officer Yanez further stated that the driver looks more like one of our suspects just because of the wide-set nose. Officer Yanez noted that he also had reason to stop the vehicle because it had a non-working brake light. He followed Castile's vehicle, waiting until Kauser arrived as backup. At 9:02 p.m., Officer Yanez ran Castile's license plate number. The results showed that the vehicle was registered to Castile, it was not listed as stolen, and there were no warrants out for his arrest. 2 minutes and 43 seconds later, Officer Yanez activated his squad lights, signaling Castile to pull over. Castile immediately complied by pulling over on the eastbound side of Larpenteur Avenue near Fry Street in Falcon Heights. At exactly 9:05 p.m., Castile's vehicle came to a complete stop next to the curb, 8 seconds after Officer Yanez activated his squad lights. Approximately 1 minute later, Officer Yanez shot Philando Castile 7 times, killing him. Officer Yanez's squad car video captured the entire incident with audio and subsequent conversations between Officer Yanez and other officers immediately after the shooting. The dash cam video reveals the sequence of events that transpired during this critical minute. Officer Yanez approached Castile's vehicle on the driver's side. Yanez later stated he was aware that Castile was buckled in his seatbelt and saw there was a young child in the back seat and a female passenger in the front seat. Officer Yanez described Castile as initially having his left arm over the steering wheel with both hands in view. Officer Yanez positioned himself facing the driver's side of the window, leaned his head forward, exchanged greetings with Castile, and informed him of his brake light problem. Officer Yanez also smelled burnt marijuana, but said he did not mention anything to Castile so as not to scare Castile or have him react in a defensive manner. As this occurred, Officer Kauser walked toward the vehicle and positioned himself on the sidewalk on the passenger side of Castile's car. Officer Yanez asked Castile to produce his driver's license and proof of insurance. Castile first provided him with his insurance card. Castile then calmly and in a non-threatening manner informed Officer Yanez, "Sir, I have to tell you that I do have a firearm on me." Before Castile completed the sentence, Officer Yanez interrupted and calmly replied, "Okay," and placed his right hand on the holster of his own holstered gun. Officer Yanez then said, "Okay, don't reach for it then." Castile tried to respond, but was interrupted by Officer Yanez, who said, "Don't pull it out." Castile responded, "I'm not pulling it out." And Reynolds also responded by saying, "He's not pulling it out." Then Officer Yanez screamed, "Don't pull it out," and quickly pulled his own gun with his right hand while he reached inside the driver's side window with his left hand. Officer Yanez pulled his left arm out of the car and then fired 7 shots in rapid succession into the vehicle. The 7th and final shot was fired at 9:06 and 2 seconds p.m. After the final shot, Reynolds frantically yelled, "You just killed my boyfriend." Philando Castile moaned and uttered his final words, "I wasn't reaching for it," to which Reynolds loudly said he wasn't reaching for it. Before Reynolds completed her sentence, Officer Yanez again screamed, "Don't pull it out." Reynolds responded by saying he wasn't. During this entire incident, Officer Kauser did not touch or remove his gun from its holster. By his actions and his own words, Officer Kauser did not see Castile make any sudden movements, and he was surprised by the gunshots. In addition, Officer Yanez never informed Officer Kauser about the presence of a gun. Within minutes after the shooting, Officer Yanez spoke with St. Anthony Police Officer Tressa Sunday at the scene of the shooting. During that conversation, Officer Yanez stated he did not know where the gun was and that Castile never told him where it was. Based upon the evidence, we believe that Castile never removed nor tried to remove his handgun from his front right pocket, which was a foot deep. When officers and paramedics rolled Castile to his right side to put a backboard under him, they saw and removed a .40 caliber semi-automatic handgun from inside the front right pocket of his shorts. The gun contained a loaded magazine, but did not have a round in the chamber. Philando Castile was transported to Hennepin County Medical Center, HCMC. At HCMC, medical personnel recovered a holster and wallet from one of Castile's pockets, although it was unclear which pocket these items were in at the time of the shooting. In Castile's wallet were his Minnesota driver's license and his permit to carry a pistol. The following day, in his interview, Officer Yanez told BCA investigators that after receiving his proof of insurance, Castile told him he had a firearm at the same time as he reached down between his right leg, his right thigh area, and center console. Officer Yanez said that as Castile was reaching down to his right, Castile turned his shoulder, kept his left hand on the steering wheel, and then canted his upper body, blocking Officer Yanez's view of his right hand. At that point, Officer Yanez articulated that he was scared for his life and that of his partner. Officer Yanez's verbatim statement, included in the criminal complaint, is inconsistent with the statement he made immediately following the incident, in which he stated he never saw or knew where the gun was. To those who may say that this incident was Philando Castile's fault, I would submit that no reasonable officer, knowing, seeing, and hearing what Officer Yanez did at the time, would have used deadly force under these circumstances. As the United States Supreme Court has instructed, I have given Officer Yanez every benefit of the doubt on his use of deadly force, but I cannot allow the death of a motorist who was lawfully carrying a firearm under these facts and circumstances to go unaccounted for. Philando Castile was not resisting or fleeing. There was absolutely no criminal intent exhibited by him throughout this encounter. He was respectful and compliant based upon the instructions and orders he was given. He volunteered in good faith that he had a firearm beyond what the law requires. He emphatically stated that he wasn't pulling it out. His movement was restricted by his own seatbelt. He was accompanied in his vehicle by a woman and a young child. Philando Castile did not exhibit any intent, nor did he have any reason to shoot Officer Yanez. In fact, his dying words were in protest that he wasn't reaching for his gun. There simply was no objective threat posed to Officer Yanez, Officer Kauser, or to anyone in that car. The mere mention or presence of a firearm alone cannot justify the use of deadly force. According to a national expert on police procedures and use of force that we retained, the totality of the circumstances indicate that Officer Yanez's use of deadly force against Philando Castile during the July 6th stop was not necessary, was objectively unreasonable, and was inconsistent with generally accepted police practices. In addition, under the same circumstances, Officer Yanez's discharge of his firearm 7 times into a vehicle in close proximity to and toward Diamond Reynolds and her 4-year-old daughter endangered their safety. Given everything I have just covered and what is contained in the criminal complaint, it is important to remember that we still must prove these allegations in court. And Officer Yanez is presumed innocent until he is found guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. I ask the public for its continued trust and patience as the court process moves forward and we strive to achieve justice for Philando Castile, his family and friends, and our broader community. Thank you very much.
Before we get to questions, I'll do a couple of quick reminders. As the county attorney mentioned, this is now an ongoing case. We can only limit those questions to the case itself. We do have a time for a few questions. I'm going to ask that you identify who you are, the organization you're with, and then state your question. So if I don't know you personally, I'm probably just going to call you by your organization. But Tim, let's start with you.
Tim Nelson from NPR. You said, I believe, Assistant U.S. Attorney Jeffrey Paulson was going to join in this case. Can you talk a little bit about his role? Does this have any impact on potential federal charges?
This is a state prosecution, and so what is happening here is that Assistant United States Attorney Jeff Paulson, with the authority and the consent of the United States government, has been allowed to be cross-deputized by me. And he will serve essentially as an assistant Ramsey County attorney and will be deputized as such and will be involved in the prosecution. And there is precedence for this. In fact, the last time we did something like this, Jeff Paulson was the AUSA who was involved in another case in which Ramsey County prosecuted.
Christina.
Christina Covered with the New York Times. I'm wondering why a second-degree manslaughter charge as opposed to murder or a more serious charge?
We, based upon the facts of this case and the law, we believe that we have charged this case with the highest, most provable offense. We can't and we don't charge people if we don't believe that we could prove a charge beyond a reasonable doubt. We believe that the charge that we have laid out of second-degree manslaughter is the appropriate one, and it's the most provable beyond a reasonable doubt. And essentially what second-degree manslaughter is culpable negligence, which is defined by gross negligence and a element of recklessness.
Maybe I missed it, John, but was Joseph Kauser cleared of any wrongdoing, and was his account of what happened that night helpful in reaching this conclusion?
Well, I think not only his account, but his actions. But I would just say that those are just a part of the facts. I mean, there's a lot of facts, and you will read in the complaint what we've included to establish probable cause. But there's a lot more facts that are a part of the investigation, and that's just one of many.
So he's been cleared of wrongdoing, he's just...
Correct. Yeah, well, no, he didn't do anything in terms of what we were reviewing in terms of the death of Philando Castile.
Liz and then Paul.
Liz Collins from WCCO. Why a summons in this case and not issue a warrant for his arrest?
Well, he will have his first appearance on Friday, and he has agreed to turn himself in. And so when we think about whether it's a summons or warrant, there are two things that the law tells us, which is public safety and whether or not the accused, the defendant, will appear. I have every confidence that Officer Yanez will be making his first appearance on Friday afternoon at 1:30 p.m. at the Law Enforcement Center.
Paul.
John, Paul Bloom, Fox 9. Just curious, I assume you had a chance to talk to Philando Castile's family today. Could you talk a little bit about that, and were they grateful for this decision?
I met with them last night. They are a very strong family, and I'll let them speak for what they thought of the meeting, but we had a chance to meet with them, inform them of the decision, and I think they were very generally accepting and supportive of what we're doing today.
Time for a couple more questions right in the back.
Adrian Broadus from Care TV. Now that you have issued these charges, will you clear Philando Castile's name in that gas station robbery which he was, well, fit the description of the suspect?
He's not a suspect in that robbery.
So has his name been cleared?
Well, we don't believe that he is. I wouldn't have charged this case if I thought that he was, so.
Last two questions.
Brett Hoffman, KSTP. This case has drawn so much attention from community members. What's your message following this announcement?
Well, first of all, let me say this, and maybe it's an apology, because I think sometimes the community members don't understand that I have a very important and special role in this process. I am an elected official, but I can't act like one. And so what I mean by that is that I have to be mindful of how I position myself with respect to this process, and making sure that I'm doing everything possible to protect its integrity. So therefore, I can't be outspoken about my thoughts and my feelings. And so I think the most important thing is I want to say to the community that I think with respect to this particular case, the community exhibited a lot of patience, and I really appreciate that. And I really need that to continue. We need to respect the process as we move forward and the integrity of it. And it's really important that, as for example, the video, the squad video, that's evidence, and that should be treated as such. And so we're going to be moving forward like we do in every particular case, and the integrity of the process matters.
Kyle Potter with the Associated Press. Do you believe that Officer Yanez acted improperly when he pulled over Philando Castile for that nearby robbery, and was that a factor in your decision?
I think that you're asking questions about issues that are going to be further considered and litigated, and so I don't want to go into the investigation. I also don't want to talk about things that will be a part of the case.
John, last question.
John, we'll start with you. John, you said this system that you're deciding is the best interest of transparency. Do you see the grand jury process as an antiquated system that should be done away with in the state of Minnesota? Mike Freeman also made a decision last year himself in the Jim Clark case.
No, I think the grand jury process has benefits. However, I will tell you that in Ramsey County, from here on forward, what we will be doing is reviewing a police-involved shooting incident that results in death, for the most part, here in this office. However, I won't say that we'll never use a grand jury, because I think there are times in which the use of a grand jury is appropriate and is beneficial to the public interest. For example, if there's an investigative reason to do so, then we will use the grand jury.
Okay, thank you very much. If I can keep you all for a couple minutes, I'll do a couple quick housekeeping things. You do have a copy of our brief press release, which we'll get into